John Gray, welcome to Roll with the Punches.
Happy to be with you.
Oh, I'm very happy to have you here. What an absolute honour and pleasure it is. I don't think there's many people that wouldn't know at least one of your books, if I were to
Yeah.
mention it. So, quite well known. How many books have you written now, John?
Well, over 25,
Over.
actually 28, but not all of them were bestsellers.
Oh my goodness, that is a
You
lot
know,
of content. How long does it take you to whip up a book?
well, the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus book was a rewrite of a book I wrote before, which took 3 years and 10 years of research. And that book was called Men, Women, and Relationships. And it's a great book. It's very meaty. It takes a long time to read. It was kind of like everything I knew about relationships. And I did a survey of people who loved it. And they said that I always said, "Did you finish it?" They said, "No, but I loved it." So I thought I'm going to write an easier, shorter version of all my research that I'd done. And that turned out to be Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which even when I promote my other books, probably most successful other book is Mars, Venus in the Bedroom. But all the other books, when I promote them, people want me to talk about Men Are From Mars. So I'm happy to do that. It's certainly needed in the world, that information. It's still needed, although it needs to be upgraded, which is, I think, the book I promote the most besides Men Are From Mars is Beyond Mars and Venus. I wrote it a few years ago because relationships have changed a lot in the last 28 years and 35 years since I've been teaching these ideas.
Yeah.
As it's a cultural phenomena as women are becoming more expressing more what we might call masculine traits, and men are expressing more what most people don't realize are feminine traits. Feminine traits are basically uh, enjoy your life, love your life, nurturing, do what you like, openness, uh, and that's back in my generation in the what was it the 70s. I was a hippie. I grew my hair out. That was the beginning of men becoming more feminine
Yeah.
and demonstrated against war, want to have peace, free love, get high on stimulants and drugs, and do what you like, do what you like. And nothing wrong with doing what you like as long as it's in balance with being responsible for your health, for other people, for the relationship, and so forth. And so it was a journey back for me from my feminine side to my masculine side and learning how to integrate both together. And I think that's what we're all trying to do in some way. We just don't
Yeah.
have guidance to do it. And relationships are an excellent way to find that balance between the masculine and feminine within all of us.
For sure. How did your journey come to this point? Like, what was your background and how did you get into this area of research?
Well, I have an unusual background. My parents are very spiritual, esoteric. I started doing yoga at 3 years old.
Oh,
My
wow.
mother had an esoteric spiritual bookstore. It was the biggest in the country, although she never advertised. Um, I grew up as a regular teenager, had lots of sex. It was in the 60s and got high. But after Woodstock, which was a great event, we were all high on mushrooms. And I just crashed. And this is back in 68 or 69, something like that. And the Beatles, who are our heroes at the time, said you can get high without having to crash if you learn to meditate. They'd just been in India with the Maharishi of the TM movement. And
Yeah.
that was a big influence on me, the Beatles and then meditation. And my mother was always meditating, but she never put it on me. Although in retrospect, I realized I've been meditating since I was a little kid. I used to go down and sit by the heater and go into a trance state or cry for the poor people. And that was just my innate tendency is to be a meditator. But anyway, in the 60s, I went over my female side. I came back by becoming a monk, a
Oh,
celibate
wow.
monk for 9 years. I had five brothers. And so I knew a lot about being a male. And I was in a monastery. So I knew a lot about being a male with other men. So when I started having relationships, women were really like from another planet. So it was a natural transition
This is
for me
fascinating.
to see the differences in the way I think and the way women think. And that came about after I stopped being a celibate, started having relationships, then became a marriage counselor or relationship counselor. But mainly I was listening to women 8 hours a day. And it was like they were all complaining about the same husband. They had the same complaints. And occasionally when the men come in, they didn't have the same complaints, So, and so it was a matter of translating that, look, we have to understand who we're dealing with and not be judgmental of differences, but to understand them and to recognize it doesn't mean your partner doesn't love you. For example, it was very common when I went to Australia, people said, oh, you should be careful. I said, no, in Australia, they understand men and women are different. This is back in the early 90s. And already a theme in Australia was a man goes to a shed. And that was similar to what I wrote in my book, Men Need to Go to Their Cave. Yeah. And that's a really key idea. Otherwise, if women don't understand a man's need to have space, his own space, where he does whatever he wants, if they take it personally, they feel like, why don't you want to share with me? And because many women, not as much now, but many women in those days, if they were to go to their cave, it was usually because they didn't trust their partner, or they were upset with their partner, they were punishing their partner, or they're angry with their partner, or they're thinking about leaving their partner. And then they start to pull away. Because connection on a biological level, and I talk about biology now, because there's so much controversy about saying gender differences. Even the Supreme Court justice was asked, how do you define a woman? And she said, I can't, you have to talk to a biologist. Well, ironically, 3 years ago, my whole book was on the biology of women, the biology of men, and how we're dramatically different in terms of what fuels well-being, what fuels passion, what fuels sexual attraction, what fuels love. Because different hormones generate love in women, different hormones generate love in men. And so we have to understand that. It's very biological.
I am really interested in talking about some of the biology of it all. What is your definition, or your definition, because I guess everyone would have different definitions of love. Like if you were to explain someone that had never heard of the concept of love, like they've come from another planet, they're like, what is love?
It's a deeply felt emotion of wanting to be of service to another human being and to fulfill them and care for them. Yeah. Deeply felt. And the reason I emphasize deeply felt is that many people have never felt it. Maybe they feel it when they eat ice cream and they go, oh, I love ice cream. And we know that experience, or I just got a package, oh, I'm so happy. But loving another person, knowing them and continuing to embrace them. And Men from Mars, and even in Beyond Mars and Venus, I talk about the different forms of love that produce female hormones in you, and the different forms of love that produce male hormones. So, for example, one form of loving that I just mentioned, a deeply felt emotion of well-being and acceptance, which seeks to care for another. I care about you. That means I prioritize you. You're more important to me than any other thing. Or, my family is more important to me. My wife is more important to me. My children are more important to me. My dog is very important to me. Okay. So these are personal attachments, and the demonstration of caring through service to another. If you care about your wife and you prioritize her, what will happen biologically is estrogen levels go up. Because when you show I care about you, then I can trust you. So many women say, I can't trust. He's not really there for me. And so when a woman feels I can trust someone, I can depend on them, the hormone estrogen goes up. And when estrogen is low, women do not have romantic feelings. When estrogen is too low and their male hormone testosterone is being produced, they will tend to have the stress hormone, cortisol, being produced in their body. So this is simple biology. It's not that complex. I mean, the biology can be very complex, but a simple version of it is just simply measure stress hormones in women, and you'll see that their estrogen is low, or their progesterone is low, and their testosterone production is going up. Now measure stress in a man, and you'll see that his estrogen is too high and his testosterone is too low for what's normal. So what's normal? A happy person, a happy man, a caring man. He, for example, has testosterone levels 10 times higher than a woman. If he's being romantic and he's in a committed relationship, at that time when he's turned on to her, his testosterone will be 20 times higher than a woman's. So these are the we want to be able to generate situations where a man's testosterone goes up in her presence, and that creates those romantic feelings. And for a woman, when she is feeling romantic towards a man, her estrogen levels normally are 10 times higher than a man's, and normally. And then to feel romantic, it starts rising to up to 20 times higher than a man's. So that's why traditionally we have these romantic rituals. For example, a man opens the door for you, even though it's a little thing, but actually it produces estrogen. It gives the woman the message that someone is attending to her, someone is caring for her. I just got back from a Mediterranean cruise, and there were 70 people on board and 150 staff to take care of all of us. And the women were just glowing because basically, and the men too, but the women were glowing because they're in a room that they don't have to clean up. They're in a room that's being cleaned twice a day. Glasses are being brought to them. No dishes have to be washed. Everything is being arranged for you. What that does biologically for a woman is raises her estrogen. Now, what it did for the men on board, which is when the wives were happy, the men take credit for it. Okay. And so their testosterone goes up. Yeah. And so it was a big win-win. Everybody was having lots of making love. One of my talks there was how to make love. And they all came back very, very happy. It's amazing how much more there is to learn, not only about communication between men and women, but how to communicate and enjoy sex in the bedroom. These are more private things, but somebody has to teach it. So I've written books on that. That's one of the books I highly recommend, called Mars, Venus in the Bedroom. It's probably the second best book in terms of sales around the world that I've written.
This is fascinating. I want you here for a whole day. I want to fly you over and just lock you up for a week and talk about this stuff. I'm so fascinated. The things I'm thinking of. I almost feel like we look at love like this mystical thing. It's almost like my purpose. We're always seeking the one and this love thing, and like it's one definite thing, and we'll know when we have it. It feels also very psychological. There's a lot of how our story interacts with how we think and feel and our biology. But when you're talking about the biology like that, is there ways we can hack our biology within our interactions, or even within our own lifestyle, to enhance how that is cultivated? Does that make sense?
Yes, I was just at a biohacking conference in London.
Biohacking love.
Yeah, I love it. And basically, I had a health food store with all the 78 different supplements and biohacking and all that, and I'm all for that. But here I'm at 70 years old, and I don't need any of it now, because I realized the ultimate biohack, and the ultimate biohack is making love. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but who wants to hear it? I can certainly talk about the dynamics of the basics of it. And it's kind of like if you wanted to be a marathon runner, or become a professional basketball player, It takes a lot of practice. It's not something that anybody can just do without training and practice. But the ultimate end goal is something that's been written about for 5,000 years in China and in India. This used to be knowledge on the planet. A lot of knowledge got lost, and they didn't have it all together, but they certainly learned. There were a certain level of spiritual people who practiced making love, where the man would not ejaculate. He could be orgasmic, multi-orgasmic, and the woman is multi-orgasmic together. And when you're able as a man to keep the semen in your body, it regenerates your body, keeps you healthy and happy and motivated. It raises your testosterone huge. Now, so I'm a 70-year-old, my testosterone is 50% higher than when I was a young man, because I've learned to practice this. And it's a new practice. It's not yet fully understood. It's very difficult to learn to do, but I can briefly go through some of the stages if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it started with the research that came out in Japan, which showed that if a man ejaculates on Saturday night with his wife, his testosterone will go back down to baseline. Baseline is every year going down for every man in the Western world. It didn't used to be that way. We're being confronted by what's called hormone disruptors, water and plastic bottles, GMOs, pesticides. This is affecting both men and women's hormones as well. That's kind of like the force we have to fight against, and we can. I do a lot of other biohacks as well for that. I do intermittent fasting, which means I eat one meal a day or maybe two within a 4 or 5 hour period. That helps to clean the liver out of all this toxicity rather than storing bad fats, okay, which inhibit testosterone production. So that's one thing. But the key factor there, and try to eat a good diet, avoid pesticides and all that as much as I can. But the real amazing hack the Japanese talked about is if a man ejaculates only once a week with his partner, on the 7th day when he wakes up, his testosterone becomes 50% higher. Wow. Now that 50% higher duplicates how you felt in the beginning. People say, I want to go back to how we were in the beginning. I want to feel that electricity like we felt then. Yeah. Now, it's not like you touch your finger and you're suddenly going to feel what you felt then, okay? But when you're getting into bed and you're doing your things, you'll feel those same excitement. You have the privacy. You need the privacy. You need to be able to open your minds and open your hearts outside the bedroom, then undress physically and allow someone to affect you in that way. But you have to realize when you have sex, you're allowing somebody to affect you. So that means you tend to take things personally outside the bedroom more. That's why you have to have good communication skills. You see, I'm letting you influence me. That's what's happening in the bedroom, which is my happiness for man. My happiness is your happiness, and your happiness is my lovingly caring for your fulfillment and your pleasure. So there's a dynamic there of letting each other influence each other hugely. Whereas, I can be driving along the road and somebody shoots me the bird. I go, I don't care. I wish you well. You must be having a bad day. That's called not taking things personally. Well, what happens is when you have healthy testosterone levels, which is equated with low stress levels in your body, which we would equate with high self-esteem. When you know that you're worthy of love and you're good enough and you're capable and you have a sense of meaning in your life, these are all like aspects of high self-esteem. Simply what the ancients would say, know thyself. Okay, when you know thyself, you don't take things personally. Yeah. And what we're seeing in America is this extreme hypersensitivity of being offended by things. And that's because we've lost our way. We've lost who we are. And you can't find who you are when your hormones are out of balance. This is just biology. If you're in a stress reaction, you're into your conditioned brain or your instinctive brain. You don't have free will at that time. See, it just takes over. It takes over you because the fight or flight thing happens. Yeah. Blood flow stops to the prefrontal cortex where you have control over this animal body that we have. And the thing that is the ultimate hack is what the Japanese discovered, which is actually part of ancient knowledge. They measured it, is that if you have sex on Saturday night and then you have sex on Tuesday night, that's typically the most common thing for couples. A couple of days off, they have sex again. A couple of days off, they have sex again. And they feel kind of a pressure to do that as well. Many men are addicted to doing more than that, but that's part of an addiction. And what they prove with this dynamic is if you ejaculate twice a week, if you're a man, it never goes up 50%.
Wow.
See, when a man's testosterone goes up 50%, he's worshiping you, basically. He's in awe of you. He loves you. He feels more love for you, more caring, more non-judgmentalness, more respect that he can feel when his testosterone levels are lower. He can learn those things, but making love is something that nourishes our spirit and our soul. And everybody who started out making love, they know that good feeling. And then they wonder, why did that go away? Well, from one perspective, it went away because they had too much sex.
Wow.
Now, you see, what happens in the beginning of a relationship is you get kind of a fantasy stimulation because you don't really know this person. You're imagining who this person is. You're just getting to know them, right? Yeah. So fantasy stimulates a huge amount of dopamine in the brain. Newness stimulates dopamine in the brain. Even danger, I could be rejected, I could do the wrong thing. That stimulates high levels of dopamine in the brain. And dopamine is the addictive brain chemical. So when dopamine goes up in men, testosterone shoots up. And when dopamine goes up in women, estrogen shoots up. So it's easy. You get such a reward for having that high dopamine spike. But that wears off after a while in a relationship because you love each other, and love produces serotonin. It's more calming. It's more soothing. It's, I have a new puppy at my house, and when I'm throwing the ball, he's all excited. That's dopamine and testosterone. And then I'll cuddle it and hold it, and he calms down. She calms down. That's the serotonin. Mother's at home. Everything's okay. I'm at ease. I'm comfortable. So that's the good part of relationships is we have this safety and this pleasure of comfort and ease and familiarity. We all want that. That's why we want relationships. But we also want all that excitement that we feel in the beginning.
Yes.
But once the newness goes away, that excitement goes away, unless we have a way of interacting both outside the bedroom and inside the bedroom in such a way that I communicate to my wife in a language, in a way, in a strategy, which raises her estrogen, because the dopamine is not going to do it anymore. It's not going to shoot up. And for a woman to be able to communicate to her partner and respond to her partner in ways which will raise his testosterone. And it's just communication that can do it. But today we're very confused. We don't have an understanding, and nobody's ever had it so clearly, although it's been written about. What are the qualities of masculine hormones? We know kind of the traditional qualities of masculinity, but now women are expressing that. So we can't say that's masculinity, but we can say those behaviors, those activities are stimulating the primary male hormone. Why do we say it's the primary male hormone? Because men require at least 10 times more testosterone than a woman to effectively cope with stress. So effectively coping with stress means that you kind of go through your life and there's not a lot of resistance to anything. You go with the flow, you roll with the punches, it's right there in front of us. You just kind of go, okay, what are we going to do next? Okay, I'll work with that. We don't get all beat up inside, take things personally, have a lot of conflicts. That happens when we're in stress. But what can happen is once you're in a cortisol state, it doesn't just go away right away. But it can go away right away if you realize that any kind of negativity coming out of me, instead of really feeling happy, loved, joyful, proud, this is who we feel when we're feeling loved and supported. Well, when we're not in that state, we should know that we can find that state again because it's who we are. It's like my little puppy, completely joyful, happy, takes it, rolls with the punches, so whatever, doesn't sort of feel judged in any way, doesn't feel need to be punished, whatever. So, this is our nature, which we disconnect with when we're in a fight or flight state. And now we know very simply, fight or flight in women will show up, their estrogen levels go down. They don't feel I can trust. And there's a lot of things that can raise estrogen and allow her to feel, okay, my partner doesn't have to be perfect for me to trust them. I can trust them to do their best. I can trust them to learn their lessons. I look for the evidence that they're trustworthy, rather than what happens when we're in a fight or flight state is the brain does this. You can't control this. In flight or flight, your brain has a 10 times more bias to look at what you can't trust. You remember that. Yeah. It comes back again and again and again. I always, when I talk about this, I think about my wife and I were at the Galapagos Islands, which are famous for these turtles that live a long time. And they were selling all these cute turtle shirts. And one of the turtle shirts was the old turtle saying to the old wife, honey, the affair was 93 years ago. Can you just let it go? It was very funny. But the brain tends to hold on to these things. Yeah. And then we let go of it. But when the fight or flight comes back, we go back to there. I talk about how, and it's more challenging for women than men. It is challenging for men, but it's more challenging for women because they have something in the brains called the hippocampus. Now, the hippocampus is your emotional memory. It's your memory, okay? And it's generally twice as big in women. The only example where men have big hippocampus was these studies done on men who learned to drive taxis in London. They had to study for 3 years to remember the city. So they actually can grow a woman's hippocampus. We can change the brain. There's no question about it. And then when they quit being a taxi cab driver, they go back down, they shrink in size. But my metaphor for that is, and another research study said that when women are experiencing moderate stress in their life, they tend to have in their brain an increase of blood flow to the hippocampus 8 times more. It's like kind of like if you have a danger, you kind of go, oh, where could that be coming from? What can I do about it? Who else is going to have it? What do I do? You know, that's a fight or flight reaction.
Yeah.
Now, under moderate stress, this is what they said, under moderate stress, women have 8 times increased reaction and men have decreased blood flow to the emotional memory, decreased. So a woman will seek out connection. She'll seek out support. She'll want to talk. She wants to feel closer. She'll look to see where I have support to counteract that low estrogen when the fight or flight happens.
Yeah.
Whereas men tend to go over to what will produce testosterone. Testosterone is produced when you feel independent. I've got to do something about it. I can't depend on anybody else. So his tendency under small stress is he will tend to disconnect. And women don't instinctively understand that. They take it personally. Yeah. You know, because her first reaction isn't under stress to like detach and mull it over. Hers is to feel it and let it go, talk about it, whatever. And he's over there thinking, well, what's going on here? You know, he's like really slow. Okay. He doesn't have an emotional response at all. And you kind of think he's stupid, but it's just slow. He's got to process it mentally and discount it or look at what do I have to do about it? And is this really accurate? And he's not even conscious. He's just sort of like, what just happened? She's upset about something. And what am I supposed to do about this? Yeah. And you have to realize that in that dynamic, he's going to be, unless it's emergency, he'll jump into action if there's something he can do. If there's nothing he can do, he kind of like, feels powerless. Well, and I tell women, you know, you can say to him at that point, and it'll be really helpful for you if you just say when he withdraws, do you know what I'm talking about? When men sort of distance themselves, they just pull away. Yeah. Well, if you say to him, so you're thinking about what I said, and he'll always say, yeah, thinking about it. And immediately you'll feel the connection again. You'll feel comforted by that. In the same way, I liken everything, well, not everything, but I liken a lot of this to sex. You know, when you're in the bedroom with your wife, you don't just expect her to rev up to 60 miles an hour like you can. You know, it's got to go slow. You got to go slow. So when it comes to men, getting them to talk about their feelings, first, he should be talking about what he thinks, and he should have a lot of quiet time. He just don't expect the same response you'd have from a girlfriend. And then you don't take it personally. So this is probably one, if we look at that biological difference, just to kind of remember it, think about the hippocampus as like a building, a library of memories. On the first floor are all good memories. On the second floor are all negative memories. Yeah. And when she's in fight or flight, she gets in the elevator and she's on the second story. That's all she can do is a 10 times bias towards looking at negativity or remembering negativity or projecting negativity in terms of an emotional response. So when she's on that second floor, I say, man, do not try to explain to her why she's not accurate. Just let her talk for a while and her feelings will change, because when a woman can talk and feel no resistance, and that's the key thing, she can talk and feel no resistance, what will happen is she'll start feeling first the hormone oxytocin will get produced. Oxytocin is a safety hormone. Okay, so nobody's going to make me wrong for what I'm saying. That's the first step. Nobody's going to correct me. Nobody's going to roll their eyes at me. Nobody's going to cut me off. I got plenty of time here. So she feels safe. Then with that oxytocin, she will begin to produce more and more estrogen, and her mind will change. And literally, it's like she puts on another pair of glasses. And she doesn't even remember temporarily the other glasses. She just shifts gears and she feels better. Yeah. And what happened is her stress level went down and her brain could now shift gears to look at what's positive. And the positive will always outweigh the negative if you're in a state of no stress. Okay, there's always negative, but the positive will always outdo if you're not in a stress state. If you're in a stress state, the negative will always win. So this is so interesting to see what goes on. Now, what do men, one of the big issues that men do that's a big mistake is their wife will be upset about something. And we will say things like, don't worry about it. It's not such a big deal. You're overreacting. Why are you going over this again? Let's just let it go. What's the point? Okay. So he's saying, he's not trying to be mean, but he's sabotaging her well-being. He's pushing her estrogen down with all of those, what he thinks are helpful bits of advice. Because a man will say to another guy, like I have two men's groups, and one of the men's groups, somebody said something and I disagreed and got really upset with him. I said, well, I think that's your ignorance. I think that's stupid. And, you know, I don't even know if I want to talk about this with you. So I had some kind of reaction. All the other guys laughed and said, oh, John, I think you're overreacting. and I was happy they said it, you know, because rarely do I overreact, but just hit some button and I'm like dumping on this guy. And they all said, oh, I think you're overreacting, John. I said, you're right. You're right. Anytime I'm upset, I'm overreacting. There's no big deal here. Come on. So I just needed that little reminding, and I didn't take it personally at all. This is guys saying to guys. But men should not say that to women. It's not a good thing. It's instead, here's what men should say. Okay, they have to do something, you know, problem, I got to react. Otherwise, his testosterone will go down. If he feels that he can't do something about it to make you feel better, he wants you to be happy and he wants you to love him, okay, and think he's wonderful. So if what he does normally doesn't work, then he can't do anything, and then he's sitting there just listening, and his energy is going down and down. And you've seen this with men where they just get bored with what you're saying and how long is it going to take, and they'll look at the clock and whatever. And so at that point, if he just knows what to do, he didn't have anybody train him in what to do, and it's never been taught what to do, because generally women had women all day long and they would talk to women and they didn't need to get their estrogen levels up. They weren't making money. You see, when you make money, you make testosterone. Money is the number one cause of making testosterone. Danger, and making money is always danger, right? You could lose it. You could say the wrong thing. The business could go down. The economy, you know, so anytime you're in danger, you're going to produce testosterone, and you should. That's good. But you need to be able to come back to, in your personal relationship, the comforting support of communication and behaviors that allow you to feel safe, so you can depend more on your partner for love and support. And you know, women can, you know, I have 3 daughters, okay? Besides all the women, I have thousands of women I've counseled. Boy, you know, we'd have Thanksgiving dinner here, and I'm living, you got my grandkids and I got my daughters and their husbands, and we're all around having this beautiful Thanksgiving dinner. And it's like I'm the king. And then afterwards, one of my daughters says to me, do you know what she said to me? And you know what they were doing? And you know, it's like they have radar to see what's wrong with this person and what did they do, what they're upset about. And I'm oblivious to it, because women have a greater sensitivity to these things. They're more aware of this. And when I say women, keep in mind, I don't mean all women. I mean a lot of women, okay? And particularly heterosexual women and heterosexual men. And, you know, it's harsh to say everybody's one way, but you can say biologically, if you have a female body that could make a baby, estrogen levels are way more significant for your well-being than for men. And you can also look at when men are angry, their estrogen levels are high like a woman's. When men are passive, their estrogen levels are high like a woman's. When men are procrastinating, their estrogen levels are high like a woman's. And yet for a woman, when estrogen levels are up, they don't procrastinate. They actually do too much, okay? It's the opposite. So many places biologically we're complementary. Because why would it be complementary? Because, for example, what do men need to do when women are sharing and about their feelings or what's bothering them is don't push it down. Don't try to eliminate any negativity. Instead, be curious. Don't simply do what I do as a therapist and get paid a lot of money. You simply say, well, help me understand that better. And tell me what else. And tell me more. And where do you think that came from? And what did he say? And then help me understand your reaction better to that. And what did you feel about that? See, these are just questions, but I don't want to do too many questions because I'm a professional therapist. No husband can be a professional therapist. Let's be realistic about that. But he can learn these 3 basic skills, and she can let him know that she really likes it. He doesn't have to become finesse. He doesn't have to be able to play ping pong like a Chinese person. They can play things like crazy. Okay. He just has to hit the ball back. And so he just helped me understand that better and tell me more, because then he feels he's doing something, and he is doing something. You see, what she needs most, and in most cases, when she's stressed, she needs to be able to talk about what's going on inside of her. And that brings her back to her estrogen production and out of so much testosterone production. See, testosterone says stuff. See, when a woman's on her male side, she's independent, like a man. He's more independent. So when I get upset, which is productive for me, I say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, it's no big deal. Well, if I can't do anything about it, I'll look at it tomorrow. Well, I'm overreacting. Well, why talk about it? There's nothing that will do. You see, that's a natural response for women, for a man. So I'm talking to a woman who's blames her husband for all her unhappiness. And I want her to know that he's only one of 50 sources of unhappiness in your life, but you project it all onto him. And she said, no, I'm so happy in my life. I said, well, what do you do? And she says, oh, I own 4 restaurants. And I said, and that doesn't cause stress? She said, there's nothing I can do about it. I said, the economy's down. You're having to fire people. What do you think about that? She says, well, there's nothing else I can do. There's nothing else I can do. Well, what else am I supposed to do? So she's in her male side, which is great for men to stay out of too much estrogen.
Yeah.
See, if I talk about my feelings so much, I'm a man. If I complain, if I whine, if I criticize, I do any of that stuff, I'm too far on my female side. And this is where now psychology has reversed everybody's thinking. So many women are led to believe that if there's some disconnection, he needs to talk about his feelings. No, she needs to talk about her feelings. He needs to listen, because when he listens, testosterone goes up, because he's solving a problem that's legitimate for her, which is for her stress to go down. She needs to talk about it. Now, I'm very aware that many women are feeling, I don't need to talk about this stuff. They're just on their male side. I get it. And they often say, I'm too busy, or he won't listen, or he wants to interrupt, or what good does it do? Well, that's just male thinking. So for those women, they're highly stressed. They come to me, they're unhappy. Unhappiness in a woman biologically is directly linked to low estrogen or low progesterone. Progesterone is a hormone that needs to be dominant for half of the month for a woman. But when you're making testosterone, you're literally converting progesterone into testosterone. So you end up having something called estrogen dominance, meaning that healthy estrogen levels, but your progesterone is too low, and that will cause suicidal feelings in women. So it's a little more complicated. I got into the complications of it, and we don't have to dwell on the subtleties here, but I do that in my book, Beyond Mars and Venus. Okay, we're beyond the traditional roles. We've evolved, I think, as a world. We're free, but freedom has consequences. Okay, so when I'm free, I can go and eat ice cream because nobody's looking over me. I'm a free person, but there's consequences for me at 70 years old to eat too much ice cream. I get belly fat right away. If I get belly fat in a man produces estrogen, makes us want to retire, makes us lose motivation, makes us more irritable, makes us more grumpy, keeps us from having a libido. All those things go along with too much belly fat in men. And their testosterone goes down as their estrogen goes up. And that's a force. It's natural anyway. You see, it's natural as it, and our natural progression is for estrogen to grow as men get wiser, because estrogen gives you wisdom. It's not like a Ferrari that wants to go from 0 to 60. It's done that. And it says, maybe we ought to slow down a little bit. Let's look at some consequences of my behavior. So this is what women have a lot of. They have a lot of that, and they typically don't have as much testosterone. But modern women today are way on their testosterone side. Their estrogen levels and progesterone levels are highly challenged. They go to their doctors, they give them estrogen, progesterone, as opposed to instruction on how you can make lifestyle changes, communication stages that will actually restore balance to your hormones and produce the right hormones. So it's a new awareness. And I didn't finish the one thing I started out with. So I want to talk about my brain hack, which is making love.
Can I ask one question first?
Absolutely.
So my question is, on that testosterone production for women, can that be kind of almost a biological addiction? Is that something that if we start there and start to move in that direction and live there, does that then drive us to continue to live in that space more?
Well, hormones all work together. The way I would see it is, and with my familiarity of how hormones work, addiction comes from dopamine production. Dopamine production comes from danger. And you'll look at women who are stressed, and that's what's causing testosterone levels to go up. You see, when you feel I have no one to support me, you're now in a fear state. That's a stress state. So I'm going to compensate and say, well, if nobody's going to help me, I'm going to do it myself. So the fact that I'm going to do it myself is when women's testosterone levels go up.
Yeah.
And at that time, what's happening as well is their dopamine levels are going high, and therefore it's very addictive. Yes. So you made an amazing point there, which is once you're over on that male side, for a woman, it's very addictive. For men, once they get over to their female side, it's very, very addictive. When basically all drug addictions, porn addictions, sex addictions, it's all too much estrogen in his body and low testosterone. See, when you do something good, it's not addictive, unfortunately.
And then one more question before your brain hack. I'm thinking about, so when you were talking about how we interact with each other to help lift each other's hormones, when we talk about this chemistry that we feel with someone, it almost feels like you could take a male and a female, and if you give them the instructions to interact in the right way, then that would create the chemistry that is love. Is there such thing as just having chemistry, or is that just two people that happen to have the right interactions?
Well, I don't think you'll never. I think there's a natural tendency. Let's say you're all just perfectly in balance. And first of all, chemistry occurs when being in your presence helps me come into balance. So you said something very key there, which is feeling that love for others, a person, not just fantasy and not just I love food and I love presents, it's I love this person, a personal love. Usually at that time, there's a balance of the right balance in your body of testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and maybe 1,000 other hormones. But those are your key ones that stand out that can be measured. So there's a state of well-being. And being in the presence was one woman can be nice, but being in the presence of another woman can dramatically increase my well-being. So there is an actual chemistry there, which is just put A and B together and there's chemistry. Doesn't mean you can sustain it, because the chemistry that's being produced is because you feel safe to be yourself. Okay. You're getting an extra bump of estrogen and testosterone because of the newness. Newness will always, that's why we're going to different ports in Italy, a new place, you walk around, you just see new buildings, you see new people, you see it, that just raises your hormones in a nice way. Yeah. But what we want is to be able to be at home when everything's familiar. I've been in the South 35 years, which, by the way, when I come back from being in the Mediterranean, I come back and see what a beautiful town I live in. So because I've been away, this seems new again. And so you get that surge of hormones, but then we start taking everything for granted. It's nature, it's what happens. So we don't want to be dependent on the newness to stimulate the hormones. What we can do is depend upon the natural chemistry, which is there that you felt in the beginning, and to sustain that through good communication. Because if you had newness, basically a woman's female hormones would go up, a man's testosterone hormones would go up. But because of your natural chemistry, it's going to go up more. See, that's the whole thing. Because I can go into a room and there's maybe 30 women when I was a young guy, and I could say I could have sex with 4 of them. If I was a teenager, I would say I could have sex with all of them. There's no discrimination at all. But wisdom, with greater wisdom and a greater sense of who we are, you naturally feel more of a connection to a particular person. So there is a uniqueness there. And because that's there for many couples, I've helped them rekindle the attraction they felt in the past because it was there. And just as a side note, often I would say to clients, can you go back and remember when you fell in love? And they when they're out of love, they usually say, I don't know if I ever really loved them, because they're disconnected from that. It's like that's a dream that they can't remember because they're not in that state where they can feel that with their partner, but instead they feel just the opposite, which is pushed down. And you remind, before we go back to that brain hack around sex, I talked about different forms of love increase estrogen. So when I'm listening to her without reacting, I'm giving her a huge gift. Men don't realize this is what women are all looking for, is to feel safe talking about what's inside of them. Her estrogen levels go up. And because he's doing something meaningful for her, his testosterone will go up. So, I just have had this great life because people pay me to sit and listen to them. And so I get paid and I get to feel like I'm helping people in a very significant way by doing very little except asking questions.
Yeah.
It's if men just understood this power. And it's also, I have to say, 10 years where I was every day doing it for 8 hours, it changed me dramatically. Because when I listen to a woman share her vulnerability, it's different from me. And yet a part of me can relate to it. And so that wakes up a part of me, but not in the same way as her. But see, we're drawn to find our wholeness inside through our partners. And to a certain extent, there's men who've written books on love who say love is a behavior. It's not a feeling. I mean, because they've never felt love. Okay. They know what loving behavior is. This is behavior to be of service to someone, but they don't actually feel the love. For most men, they only feel love for a person when they're naked. Wow. For women, they can feel safe with a man, not just by getting naked. They feel safe by opening their mind and their heart. Yeah. So that's what opens up a woman's sexuality. But for a man, it starts with sexuality. He feels that desire. He doesn't have to know the person, but to get to know her first takes them out of the animal zone of just wanting to go procreate. That's the instinct inside of men, is just go out and have sex till you make a baby. Ironically, when a woman does love you and you love her and you want to make a baby because you love each other, your body actually makes a different hormone. That hormone's called prolactin for a man. If he's making love to his wife, his body makes prolactin. If he's masturbating or he's doing porn or if he has a one-night stand, his body doesn't make prolactin. That was an Italian study. And what prolactin does, it frees him from the addiction to sex. That's why men have a recovery period where they have sex and then they can't get it up for a while. Well, if you love a woman, you're going to have a bigger recovery period. You're going to make more prolactin. And it's nature's gift to evolution, which is to keep the man not interested in other women if he's producing prolactin. If there's no prolactin, he needs to keep going out there till some woman picks him. And so when that woman picks him, his body, and the body knows she's having orgasms, she's open to him. There's all kinds of pheromones being produced, chemicals. So then usually it's with his wife when they can measure this, his body will make prolactin after sex, which causes a lack of interest in sex for 6 days, 7 days. Now, if you're 70 years old, it'd be like 9 days for me. It would be some men, it's 30 days, have sex once a month, because they love their partners. There's all that familiarity. Their testosterone levels aren't so high. The average man at 50 has half the testosterone, and I'm over here at 70 with 50% higher. It's because I learned how to manage my masculine side with my partner and her feminine side, creating safety, allow her to feel safe in the bedroom, and learning how not to have more sex than once a week, unless we're on a vacation where there's a lot of dopamine being produced, or we're on a boat, or we're going on a special date. And certainly you can do more. It's not like a immoral thing, but what we see today is couples after 10 years are just not having that much sex. And, they think it's due to, we've had children and that's it. Well, children certainly create an interruption because you do want to have privacy. Privacy is very important because to keep sex alive, your partner must feel special. There's something special between the two of you that you don't share with anybody else. It's also monogamy. Very, very important for a woman to feel that she's special. She doesn't have to compete with anybody. He cares more about her than anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's huge estrogen producer in her. And a woman's orgasm is 20 times higher estrogen than a man. Okay, so she has to double her estrogen levels to truly surrender her heart. It's safe to do that if a man's truly there for you. So caring, understanding, that's the listening, is when he's understanding of her, he can see her point of view. He doesn't have to agree with it. See, that's the thing. You can understand, just live in my moccasins for a while, and you can be empathetic. You can understand where I'm coming from. Don't make me wrong for it. You may not agree with it. You don't have that experience. That's okay. You just have to validate. That's understanding, caring, and respect. Respect is highly significant for women. You know, men are, all these books are saying, women, respect your man. Well, women always respect men. It's women who need the respect. When you respect someone, their estrogen levels go up. It's biological. And certainly I need estrogen too. I need to feel love. But I have other hormones. What makes testosterone? When you respect someone, that means I'm going to serve you. I'm going to open the door for you. I'm going to let you go first. I respect the speed limit. I'm going to slow down. I want to go faster, but I'll slow down. I go into a store. I respect the owners. I'm not going to steal things from them. That's what respect is. When you respect someone, that means you're going to do something for them. Then that person you're doing something for, it raises their estrogen. And that's the feeling of love for sure. And women need that respect to sustain the love in their relationships. It's very hard for men to respect women in a culture that doesn't understand what modern women's needs are. You see, in my father's generation, he didn't have to say to my mother, tell me more, what else or anything. My mother didn't care about that. He just was a good wage earner, and he was a policeman for the family. She could say to us boys, if you don't listen to me, I'll tell your father, and he'd spank us. So he was a policeman. He was the provider. My mother was a happy woman. That was the way the world used to be. She could be doing nurturing activities, and it wasn't just raising all these boys alone. She had other women around, other places she could send us. You know, when a woman has to just raise her child all by herself, that's not natural either. But also, you know, not seeing your children is not natural either. You know, this is part of you. You want to be part of that. What's interesting is, you know, as I'm just going a little off the subject here, but again, it's a difference between men and women. When I was traveling and doing different talks in different places, my wife could tell me things about the kids, and I felt connected to my children through her. But when a woman is out there and she's talking to her husband at home and he says all these wonderful things, she doesn't connect to the children through him. See, there's a placement of things, and she's going to feel she's missing out, and that's painful. And what people do when there's pain, you can't do anything about it, and you're on your male side, you deny it. But for a man, denying will produce testosterone and increase positivity. But for women, denying feelings inhibits estrogen production. And it doesn't have a good effect on her. Psychology has just led us all down the wrong direction by saying that men and women are the same.
Yeah. What about trauma bonding? And specifically, I was going to ask you about trauma bonding anyway, but then specifically before, when you talked about how sex produces prolactin, if someone is in a trauma bonded relationship, does the same chemistry get produced?
The trauma bonding is, we don't have research on prolactin there. We have prolactin gets produced when trauma bonding is more of a dopamine stimulator, okay? Which is if you have trauma, and this is for, if women have trauma with their fathers, one of the common tendencies is to have sex, want to have sex with men who are unavailable, men who are dangerous, men who, due to their dangerous qualities, unavailable qualities, married qualities, raises her dopamine and then causes her sex energy to increase. So, you know, we're complex beings here, okay? If I make safety for my wife, her estrogen will go up, and it's not dependent upon dopamine to raise her estrogen. So there's two ways to feel good. You can take drugs to feel good, or you can just be in balance and you'll feel good. But when you're in balance and you feel good, it's not addictive. It takes willpower and awareness. Is that the freedom that you feel when you feel good, you have to be aware of the consequences. And I'm just pointing out there are consequences when women go to their female side, go to their male side too much. That's one of the major reasons she's not getting enough of the nurturing on her female side, she will feel stressed. And for men, if they're finding they're procrastinating or they get angry, and if a man's angry and he talks to the person he's angry with, have you ever noticed they get angrier? He doesn't feel better. His estrogen goes up. When estrogen goes up, he goes more into fight or flight. And it takes longer for him to come back to an open heart. This is called men argue with a woman and then they go to their cave and they stay there for days, weeks, because he kept talking when he was upset. I learned that just if I start to get upset, stop talking, ask questions. And if asking questions still upsets me, then take a time out. Don't feel like you're being shot with guns, machine gun shooting you up. You don't do that. But you duck and dodge until you realize, okay, I'm out of shape here. I'm not understanding the benefit to me and to her if I don't react. You see, don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. Recognize women. A nice way of looking at it is, generally speaking, women are like the weather. You can't control it. What you can do is put on a raincoat. You can put on a warm jacket. You can take off your shirt if it's too hot. Just don't make her wrong for it. But that's asking a lot. Okay. So there's stages to all this. The more you understand how women are different, the easier it is for a man to do this, is to realize most negative emotions are completely irrational, and they're the accumulation of many, many things that are not fully processed or expressed. So the woman who comes on stage and says, my husband's my problem. I said, are there any other problems in your life? She says, no, everything's fine. Well, what she's doing all day long is this is basic good psychology from Freud. All day long, she's suppressing. And then when she comes home and feels relatively safe, it all just gets projected onto whoever makes them feel safe, or more importantly, whoever they had sex with. Okay, because sex is a much bigger dynamic. Once you have sex with someone, it means they become the target of all your angst inside. It just goes right on them. This is why couples, once they start having sex, things can become real turbulent. But what can save that, if I'll get back to the beginning where I talked about this amazing research, if a man just doesn't have so much sex, he just has sex once a week with his partner, then at least one day a week, they get to experience the making love that they felt in the beginning without the high dopamine, without the newness. Your testosterone goes up 50%. You see, newness stimulates high testosterone. So the way he makes love to you will allow your estrogen levels to go up, because he'll be feeling so much caring, so much attention, that the best side of him coming out. It's not just wham, damn, thank you, ma'am, let's just get this done. She feels like a repository. Okay, I'll do this for my husband. She needs to be into it. Ironically, if she's into it more than him, then you have a really great relationship. As long as she's not, as you just traumatically bonded. Okay, the trauma woman, if you go to women who are addicted to sex, it's always a trauma bonding, and they're with the wrong guy. They pick the wrong guys. This is a pattern. Not all women have it, but you see some women who say, I keep falling in love with the wrong guy. And I say, well, when you were falling in love and you didn't know him very much, did you feel sexual attraction? And they say, yes, I couldn't wait to get into bed. I said, next time you feel sexual attraction towards a man, run the other direction. That's your trauma controlling you. Instead, what you do is you have to go through a period, and you don't have to necessarily go into 3 years of therapy or whatever to heal your relationship with your dad, although that might be good if you could. But what you do right away is you make behavioral changes. See, behavioral changes are the most powerful ways to change the wiring in the brain. Therapy is helpful, but it's actually the behavioral change that allows you to grow new pathways in your brain. And particularly new behaviors literally will grow new pathways. So you have to make a conscious choice to pivot, which means if I'm in this case, if I'm turned on to a man, I don't even know him, he's the wrong man, I can intellectually look at that, even though my body thinks he's the right man. Now I'm going to do something the opposite. I'm going to entertain men who are interested in me, who I'm not sexually attracted to. And then you can practice all the new skills that I teach in my book, Mars, Venus on a Date for single people, or my book, Mars, Venus, Beyond Mars and Venus. There's skills, there's practical techniques. For example, you're on a date with a man. You're never looking for your soulmate. you're healing yourself. So what you're doing is you're creating a series of positive dating experiences where you try out new patterns of interacting, like making sure that you talk twice or three times more than him. That's one. Don't be an interviewer. Don't ask so many questions. Don't get him talking about himself. Don't have sex right away. He wants sex right away. Don't have sex right away. Practice ways of saying no. You don't want to hurt his feelings. You say, oh, I'd love to have sex. I just need to go slow. I'm a bit old fashioned. Okay. That's all a man needs to hear. Otherwise, his ego is hugely bruised, because there's this imagination out there that everybody's having sex. And that's not true either. It's 20% of men who fit the alpha male look, who are getting all the sex. And 80% of the women that have sex with him all end up feeling hugely hurt and rejected, and men are no good because those women were happy to have sex with a guy who didn't earn his way in. This is kind of a bitterness for men today, because they know this is becoming quite rare. Unless you've got a house, unless you're 6'2", unless you know, certain qualifications, they're not interested in you. So you hit there's a certain alpha level. 20% of those guys have what it takes for 80% of women to say, come on over. And this is research. It's not my research. This is what I read in research and so forth. Yeah. But coming back to what I do know and my own experience and helping people and seeing big results, is if you have sex more than once a week, generally speaking. And I remember in the beginning of my marriage, there was like this pressure to have it at least twice a week. You know, oh, we're not keeping up with the Joneses and whatever. And all it takes is to have sex twice a week. And suddenly, basically, you're not going to make the prolactin. You're basically going to start getting addicted to sex again. You're going to hit a week later, from Saturday night to Saturday night, your testosterone levels are going to be baseline. And baseline in our society today, you'll stay at baseline your whole life if you have sex twice a week, or you masturbate twice a week, or you masturbate 10 times a week. This is what's happening to the younger generation. Not only do they stay at baseline, but we see they're 20% lower than they were 20 years ago.
And is this applicable to males and females? Or is this more for the males' reduction?
This is the testosterone levels in males. But see, for a woman, her estrogen levels, and when it comes to romance, are highly dependent on a man's testosterone levels going up in her presence.
Right.
It has to go up in her presence. Then literally they've measured that when men produce a lot of pheromones, testosterone pheromones, women's estrogen pheromones shoot up. And women need, and it's also shown that when her estrogen levels go up, it puts pheromones that will increase a man's testosterone levels. So there's a reciprocity of it building and building and building. And many couples miss out on that because, you know, they're doing, you know, the whole thing in 20 minutes rather than the foreplay being 20 minutes, you know, a couple of minutes for him and then a good 20 minutes for her. And then you do the deed, and for some minutes, 5 minutes, some is 2, whatever. But as long as she has the orgasm first, at least it's a healthy relationship. But no pressure. You know, I just wish everybody would stop being so pressuring women to have orgasms. Then they would experience what's called an orgasm rather than a climax. See, climax, there's a distinction between orgasms that women have. Freud talked about it, and he was boo-booed, and all these women were upset with him. How dare you say this? You're not a woman. I've checked this out with so many women, and I've had many women. I know the difference. There's primary clitoral stimulation, orgasm is a climax. The tension builds, and you're really focused on it, and then it's a big release, and everything doesn't want to be touched after that. That's like a man's ejaculation. That's a climax. Then there's something called an orgasm where you just surrender and you're enjoying it. You're not pressured, and you have a big peak of pleasure, and you go, oh, amazing. Your vagina contracts just like the other orgasm, but you're ready for another one and another one, and another one. And that happens through vaginal orgasm. So vaginal orgasm, there's several spots that Masters and Johnson discovered by taking pictures in the vagina while women were having orgasms. Multi-orgasmic women, not all women could easily do that, but and maybe it's not a necessity, but I do know that when men can give women ample, like at least 20 minutes of good stimulation before penetration, and then at least 5 or 10 minutes of gentle getting more and more, she can have vaginal orgasms. It's just so many women have never had them because they didn't have a man who could provide that for them. And men didn't understand the dynamics of how to do it. there's so many subtleties. I have a class at marsvenus.com that helps people, or my book, lots of good techniques. I even have more now. I haven't written a book on the more. I'll just mention just sex once a week is such a powerful tool, because your testosterone levels will be so much higher, that allows you to sustain that strong caring and adoration and love, and actual performance lasts longer, giving her a chance to go higher and higher. Then once you've done that for like 3 to 6 months, your prolactin levels build up in your body, and you really are not turned on to any kind of stimulation outside yourself, just your partner. Because a man can love his wife for sure and be turned on by some woman undressing. A 18-year-old walks through the restaurant in Hawaii and she's wearing a string bikini. Every man looks, okay? It's a natural thing. Or I just don't stare, is what my wife said. She gave me an elbow and I said, oh, okay, I'll stop looking. But arousal is a natural primitive thing. The more mature a man is, if he's monogamous, his body will build up this prolactin that frees him from lusting after other women, from being turned on to other women, and just being turned on to your partner. This is a discipline of letting the testosterone go higher and higher, bonding with your partner more and more. That just makes her estrogen be higher. Every couple, to a certain extent, has to recover to some extent after he ejaculates, because his tendency, ejaculation in a man is high estrogen. His love increases very higher than his testosterone balance. And that's where he loses his control and he ejaculates. Okay, so that's high estrogen. Yeah. But then in order to bring the estrogen down, he has to depersonalize. Everything personal is estrogen. Everything impersonal is testosterone. So he has to become impersonal for a while. That's why women will notice after a romantic weekend with a man, maybe lots of sex and very closeness, it's all great. Then he's ignoring her for 5 days. You kind of go, what happened? I thought we hit this new level of happiness and fulfillment. And he's like busy working, doesn't even notice I'm in the bedroom. So this recovery period is going to be greater if you have too much sex. And so that's just a huge awareness for couples to get. And I get men are saying, well, I want more sex. I want more sex. I just say, look, you're addicted to sex. Start doing this. You'll have prolactin. You won't miss it. You'll start to find that you can cuddle, you can kiss, you can be foreplay. You can do foreplay without having to do the whole act, and you're very fulfilled. Then what you do is you learn the skills of how to be multi-orgasmic, so you can have sex for an hour or so, 2 hours, and take her to heaven. But you have to be completely, first of all, you have to be done with your addiction to ejaculation. Then what you can do is practice. And the practice does require some instruction. And I give men instruction on how to do that. It's taken me 40 years to learn how to do it, or maybe 30 years. Because if you try it, you'll get blue balls, you see.
I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but I feel like this is something that should be taught to us, to everybody, almost in school, from the standpoint of not from a weird place, but good relationships with others and ourselves is the cornerstone of good humanity. Absolutely. And see, it's not a coincidence. We call it making love. Okay. Because every couple over time, they love each other, they made a commitment to each other. They're responsible for each other, but they're not feeling the love that was possible to be felt, the feeling of love in their heart. And it's part of when I talk about making love. I mean, there's so many cool ideas I have about it, but for men, pleasure is very addictive. Okay. And for women can be, but for men, really, visual stimulation, suddenly you're feeling all this arousal, blood flows going down south is very pleasurable. And you can, in a sense, get lost in the pleasure rather than noticing this feels good. I'm feeling pleasure, so I can be more in touch with my feelings for my partner, and then express my feelings for my partner. See, this is a time when a man can feel, in the beginning of a relationship, men are saying, I love you so much. I just want to be with you. The only one for me. Gosh, you're just so beautiful. I'm in awe of you. I'm just so lucky to be with you. All the things he said in the beginning, he said it all. He has to say it every time. Okay. It's like, you want to grow the pathways in his brain when he's feeling pleasure. See, pleasure has no resistance. Okay. So this is when we're open to being affected by someone. Yeah. So that's when he can feel the most. See, women, when men go through a divorce,
men are married in 3 years on average. They need women to feel love. We all need to feel love, but men particularly need sex, which allows them to get in touch with what they feel. Now, women, on the other hand, will take 9 years on average, because they go from a painful relationship to, I can feel love for my children, I can feel love for my clients, I can feel love for nature, I can join this group. They can find their love in other ways, but they can't be orgasmic in other ways. Orgasmic is where you're lengthening your life, generally speaking. Okay, so if you're stressed, that's going to interfere with that. But if you learn to be multi-orgasmic, and to be multi-orgasmic is a man has to vaginally orgasmic, a man has to be able to sustain that. And usually 5 minutes is not going to be enough. Okay, and that's your average that men have, 2 to 3 minutes inside, or 5 minutes on average. And a lot of the men, if you watch the porn movies, you see they can last longer, but they have no emotion. You see, they have no estrogen. So what you want to be able to do as a man is be at the point where at any moment you could ejaculate. That means your estrogen's really high, but you don't. And how do you do it? Is that there's a point coming where I'll ejaculate. So about 30 seconds to a minute before that, you do the same body movement your body does when you ejaculate, because that movement that you do releases the tension. You don't have to ejaculate if you don't build the tension up so much that your body takes over. Because, scientifically, when you're aroused, your testicles heat up. And if they get too hot, it will kill the sperm. So your body will expel it if you get too hot. So you just have to, before you get too hot, you don't have the ejaculation response, but you still have this buildup of tension. If you just do the same movements that your body does automatically, then you have an orgasm and have another one, and you have another one, and you go deeper and deeper into her. It's like a whole world of discovery when people start learning these ideas. This is the new world we can move towards. And what a beautiful gift that is, because there's nothing more powerful to balance a woman's strong masculine side by coming home to making love and be orgasmic, and having a man who could do it every day. My joke is, I was recently at a conference on biohacking, and I was having breakfast with all these Iron Men. And so I said, well, I'm not an Iron Man. They said, how far can you do this and this and this? I said, no, but I've got an iron penis. They all got very quiet. It's just a joke. It was my joke.
So fascinating. I love it.
Usually these guys can't get it up anyway because they're taking steroids. And even if they're not taking steroids, a lot of men with huge muscle mass. This is when I started learning about this. I had a man who was like Superman coming to me for counseling, and he says, I can't get it up after 3 times being with my girlfriend. And that's because, see, the estrogen was now going so high, higher than his testosterone. And why was his testosterone so low? He was overtraining. See, it uses up your testosterone to make those muscles. So he was just overtraining. He needed more recovery time. And if he had more recovery time, he could then now allow his testosterone to build up. And that's what I call the cave. That's what the cave is for men. When they pull away from personal interactions and do things that they're good at, that they're confident about, that will build testosterone. But cave time activities can be productive and unproductive. Remember, freedom always has consequences. So if in your cave, you're just doing porn, you'll get a surge of testosterone and it crashes back down to baseline, and baseline just keeps going down, down, down. What we want is for baseline to go higher and higher and higher. And how you practice sex will do it. And making love is not so much sex, but sex is a part of making love. And then there's other things, fasting and discipline, following through, doing what you say you're going to do, taking risks in life and following through, not procrastinating. All those things also produce testosterone, healthy testosterone. But just go and do porn and you lost it all. This is what our younger generation is just lost in the world of fantasy. And then meta, the whole idea of these 3D glasses, this just overstimulates the brain with dopamine. That desensitizes dopamine receptor types. And the world which was somewhat flat, which is why you did meta. Meta means these other universes they're creating now. That's the death of mankind. I think people are waking up to that. We know that the digital stimulation causes your brain to become addictive to it. And see, what addiction means is that high stimulation is required to make you happy. So if high stimulation makes you happy, then normal stimulation doesn't make you happy at all and can actually make you unhappy. These are biological responses. I wrote a whole book called Staying Focused in a Hyper World on ADD for women and men, and explaining the whole brain function of hyperstimulation. If you have hyperstimulation, you need to then balance it with boring activities, okay? And until boring activities feel good again. You need to take your kids who have ADD, and they take them out in the camp, go out in the forest, no digital at all. Within a few hours, they'll forget about it. I mean, it was wonderful being on the cruise with no TV. I didn't miss it at all. It's just being in nature and whatever, you become a human being again, which is dependent upon social interaction. You see, we're interacting as beautiful on computer, but your body is not getting what it needs in terms of the energy of another person, the touch of another person, the actual when you're physically around somebody, there's a lot of changes that happen. It can sound woo-woo, but it's very real. And we all know that when it comes to sexual attraction, when you're around someone, it's very, very natural to be around them. But at the same time, I have to see how you can do sexual attraction online, and it's more intense. You see, it's a higher dopamine stimulator, and people are addicted to it. And here's another sample of that. What they say, the research on this, it's easy to research through computers what people are doing. 8 minutes is the full time someone will spend at a porn site. That means they've got to go on the site, look for somebody, get turned on, do the act with them, and then they finished all within 8 minutes. And they never want to, on average, they never want to see that woman again. Is this love? No, this is nothing. This is bad for you. So I don't look at it as morally wrong. It's just that you don't give people fentanyl, anyway, you don't give people cocaine. It just makes them addicted. You look at porn, you're going to make you addicted. It's period. Unless you are really grounded in your love for your partner, and then you're not even interested. It looks like a bunch of actors. It's all fake.
I've loved this. There's at least 3 of your books I'll be reading. Just based
call
on...
me back. Well, have questions for me. We covered the basics here. If you get feedback from
I would love to have you back, because I feel like there's so much more that I could talk to you about. It's been amazing, John.
Really happy to be with you. I love your title, Roll with the Punches. I just think that's what we all have to do. One of my themes is take it as it comes, go with the flow. But if you don't have a flow, you're always resisting what is, instead of like a river moving around rocks, moving downstream. You've got your direction. You've got to, roll with the punches. Life has got punches, and just roll with it rather than fight it. It's
really funny. One thing I'll tell you, for a long time, so I realized quite a few years ago, I recognized myself that that when I was experiencing any sort of attraction or interest in a male, that they were either literally or emotionally unavailable. And I got into a quick couple of relationships and I was like, these are not good or healthy. So I lost the ability to trust that feeling, right? And the conversation I've had with my therapist a lot recently, we're trying to, exploring dating, and I said, you don't understand, when I put myself into that arena, I have this biological response that is just fight or flight. I'm in hyper arousal and it's not fun, and it makes me not want to do it. And you talked about that better than anyone I've heard. Like, it was good to hear someone that kind of understood that concept that was happening. And yeah, I'll be interested. I'll be reading some of your books.
Well, let me say one other thing, which is a big theme. If you were to visit my house or my office, it's a very cool office, and my house is very beautiful, and you would just see how beautiful it is. You say, oh, John Gray lives in a lovely house. But if you wanted to buy my house, you would hire someone to look at what's wrong with that house. That's what they do now. And you look under the house to see where the cracks are, do the screen doors work, what's the heating bill, how's the pool work, all those dynamics. This is really what you want to get into here. So this is when you're looking to buy, your brain goes into the bias of looking at negativity. And if you don't look to buy and give yourself a grace period, just saying, I'm just going to find out who's approaching me and how can I use them to practice new relationship skills. And the difference between men and women, and I'm speaking this for women, is men don't mind being used as long as you're smiling and you appreciate them, and you don't have, they take you to dinner, you don't have to have sex with them. Okay. It's just like you gave them a huge gift just to be in the presence of a woman who's happy. There's research showing that men's stress levels dramatically drop in the presence of a woman who's happy. So you're giving them a huge gift. We cannot get this same gift from being with men. It's women open our hearts. Men do not open our hearts. Men with men can build confidence without a doubt, but it doesn't build estrogen. And so if I'm feeling successful in providing something for you, my testosterone goes up. But because I'm doing it for you, my estrogen goes up as well. So I'm able to feel happy and joyful and appreciation. And I just, the other thing I forgot to mention is what women need is a caring, understanding, and respect. If we just put it, those produce estrogen. What produces testosterone is appreciation. When a man does something for you and you appreciate him, he gets a big surge of testosterone. When a man makes a mistake and you say it's not such a big deal, then he feels accepted. Then his testosterone goes up. And when a woman can lean on a man and let him do things for her, she can ask for help. Then she's going over a big barrier of saying, I'm not going to do everything for myself, but I'm going to let him do things for me. That's called trusting that I can depend on him. Because you already talked about, you depend on a guy and he's not there. It can be very painful. So it's learning how to trust without demanding perfection. So these are all tough things. And for men, how do I care for a woman without feeling a demand for perfection from her? Because these are our real vulnerable places as men and women are hormonal beings, is that when women feel I can't get what I need, I stop trusting. And when men feel I can't be successful with her, I stop caring. So this is what you'll see. Women complain, men stop caring. Men don't complain, but when you go deeper, men realize, yeah, she doesn't trust me anymore. Men aren't as subjective as women. They just make judgments when she's never happy. Okay, well, that means she doesn't trust you. And she goes, yeah, I'm not the hero anymore. She's not happy to see me. I said, well, but how are you responsible for that? They have no idea. They have no idea. And when women tell me, he's so unavailable to me, he doesn't do anything for me, she has no idea of how she is contributing to that problem.
Love
okay.
this.
It just, there's been books written about that. I sort of update them, but that's called codependence, where you give more than you're getting. And when you give more than you're getting, you're training someone to give you less. There's so much for us to learn about modern relationships, but it's there. It's there.
All right, you're coming back 100%. In the meantime, where can my listeners check you out, get involved in your courses, workshops, buy your books, all the things?
So at marsvenus.com, we have a free class for people there, marsvenus.com, right on the front page. Or they can go to marsvenus.com/gift. It's a free course that we give. We also have particularly courses for women. How to get your me time is basically how to be happy and not depend on a man so that you can then get more from a man, and how to ask for help and set boundaries. So I recommend any woman to take our women's only course, which is how to get your me time. And then coming up soon, sometime in the next few months in the year 2022, we will have a course called Understanding Men. And it is our amazing course. It's been these are courses written by my daughter and I, and she teaches them to women and works with women. It's amazing. We're just so happy about that as well. Because, Men Are From Mars teaches these ideas. And then my daughter, who's now grown in a marriage and everything, she goes much deeper into it all, because she's lived it and she goes to a deeper level with it. And so we write these new courses together. And so that's available at marsvenus.com. You'll see her when you're there. There's lots of great blogs that she does.
That's amazing. I'll be checking that out, and I'll have links in the show notes to this show. John Gray, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Please hit me up with any questions you might have, because I will be tugging on John's sleeve to come back.
Thank you.